Well, the Trump administration says it will cut $450 million in funding to Harvard because they failed to address race discrimination by the government's own standards. Now, our next guest is not here to defend Harvard. Absolutely no fan of Harvard. None of us should think that Harvard is a great place for academic freedom and discovery. But there is a case to be made that Harvard should have academic freedom that is not governed by the government.
Are you ready to break free from the outdated buy and hold crypto strategies? Unlock the true potential of cryptocurrency. Welcome to the cryptocurrency revolution from Block Trust IRA. Their AI-driven technology predicts the market with computer-driven accuracy, whether you have a retirement account like a 401k or an IRA or just cash savings sitting in a bank, making you little to no interest. Block Trust's IRA's clients are able to maximize their earnings potential and outperform the market. They're the only crypto management firm in the market that's using cutting-edge technology to improve returns and significantly reduce risk. Crypto has created more than 80,000 new millionaires just in the last year. And you could be next. Block Trust IRA makes financial freedom available to everyone by accepting both IRA and cash investments from around the world. And unlike meme coins or scam coins that prey on hardworking Americans, Block Trust IRA has the best-in-class military-grade technology. Their clients are 100% insured for up to $200 million. So right now, in fact, if you go to redactednewscrypto.com, you can get started with Block Trust IRA. And they offer the industry's lowest fees, military-grade security, the power of elite AI technology, all tailored for everyday Americans. In fact, if you go to redactednewscrypto.com, they are so confident in their ability to help you succeed that for a limited time, they're offering up to a $2,500 bonus in crypto when you open an account. Yes, receive up to $2,500 in bonus crypto when you open an account. Go to redactednewscrypto.com today. Click on the link in the description below this video or call their 800 number, 1-877-649-6732, just to get started today.
Nick Perino is the executive vice president from FIRE. That's the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education. They're a legal organization that defends Americans whose free speech rights are violated on both sides of the political spectrum. He also hosts the So to Speak, the Free Speech podcast. Now, to be clear, on FIRE's own website, Harvard is last in rankings for free speech. FIRE founder Greg Lukianoff rails against Harvard in his book, The Coddling of the American Mind. I think we can all agree Harvard is a hellish echo chamber, to be sure, but the Trump administration seems to be violating their right to academic and educational freedom. Even if you hate the idea of Harvard, you should be worried about this for the repercussions it can have on us all. So thank you, Mr. Perino, for joining us. What is your take on why we all need to defend Harvard, whether we like them or not?
Yeah, well, you're totally right. They've been at the bottom of FIRE's college free speech rankings for the past couple of years. We've had our fights with Harvard going back decades now. But you don't solve censorship with more censorship, and that's what we're seeing here. You see the Trump administration coming in and trying to essentially federalize or nationalize the university, requiring viewpoint diversity within the university through these sort of audits of faculty and students, these highly intrusive audits of faculty and students. They're asking the university, or I should say demanding that the university reform its governance procedures, even implementing new disciplinary procedures for students and faculty, targeting students and faculty who are involved in some of these post-October 7th protests for discipline, even if they've already been tried. So in that case, you risk double jeopardy. Harvard is a private institution. It has its own First Amendment rights. Now, people on the other side will say, well, it's the government's money, it's the government's rules. But the purse strings cannot become marionette strings. You cannot use funding to take away someone else's constitutional rights. And that's what we're seeing have happen here. So it's a violation of the Constitution, but it's also a violation of statute. The Trump administration is alleging violations of the Civil Rights Act under Title VI, which prohibits discrimination based on race, sex, and national origin, and has been expanded to also go after anti-Semitism. And there are statutory requirements through Title VI before you revoke federal funding. There needs to be an attempt at a voluntary resolution. There needs to be a hearing. There needs to be evidence introduced. There needs to be notice to Congress. And even after all that has happened, you cannot revoke funding until 30 days after which that process has ended. The federal government did none of that here. It essentially said verdict first, trial later, if there's going to even be a trial at all. So the administration is wrong on two counts, constitutional counts and statutory counts. And the ends don't always justify the means, even if you agree with what the administration is trying to accomplish.
Wow, you really nailed it, because I was going to say on Title VI, like, is this a path down that, is this a valid path for funding cuts? But you've laid it out. They've got to have a due process. They've got to see that there is a reasonable responsibility to try to solve this, but they didn't.
And there's a historical parallel here too. For over a decade, we've been working with conservatives to go after the Obama and Biden administration's attempt to weaponize Title IX, which prohibits sex discrimination in educational programs. And the Obama administration in 2011 put out a letter that gutted due process and gutted free speech protections for students and faculty on college campuses. And we never heard arguments from either side of the political spectrum that it's the government's money, it's the government's rules. But in this case, it seems like we're hearing that from conservatives all the time. It's like, well, we like the outcomes, and now we're going to say that federal funding can have strings attached. So for us, working on all sides of the political spectrum, we see this as very much similar to what we did in the Title IX context.
At the heart of this is constitutionally sound way of trying to go after this. Is there a constitutionally sound way for any sort of like future administrations to be able to tackle this, left or right? To be able to hold elite universities like Harvard accountable for like silencing dissent and pushing some sort of ideological, orthodoxy on people?
Well, it depends. It depends what you are actually going after. If you are going after violations of Title VI and allegations of anti-Semitism, then you go through the statutorily required process. And you can't, in the process of doing so, also go after core protected speech. Now, you tend to see a conflation between unconstitutional or unlawful discriminatory harassment, which the Supreme Court has defined as conduct that is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies the student a right to an education. You've seen the conflation of that with chants like "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," as if this one chant is a form of unlawful harassment. And that's not the case. You've also seen the administration demand that colleges implement the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, which includes a list of, I think, something like 11 different arguments that someone could make that could be anti-Semitic that include criticisms of Israel. So we've seen a lot of conflation there. And you also have President Trump, who will put out truth posts that say that Harvard has leftist bird brain professors, woke professors on its staff. We might agree with that argument, right? But that's different than a Title VI complaint. So if you're just going after a university because you don't like its faculty, well, that raises First Amendment concerns. If you're going after a university because of unlawful discrimination, that is something the administration can do if it follows the proper process and doesn't target viewpoint or constitutionally protected speech in that process.
Now, one thing FIRE constantly makes the distinction about when they announce their side on any given issue is there is already a law for crime. So if you disrupt a classroom, if you hold people hostage, if you are assaulting people, it really doesn't matter what your nationality is or which group you're protesting for or against. And so they could... Is it because there's just not enough crime here? It's thought crime that they are sort of taking this and running with it?
Yeah, well, I think what some people would allege is, okay, you have building occupations, you have vandalism, for example. These are crimes that can be punishable. But colleges and universities over the past 2 years haven't always actually attempted to punish that crime. And, for example, at Columbia or at Harvard, for example, and that the lack of punishment of these crimes could itself be a violation of Title VI if you are not taking the same approach with other speakers, for example. This makes me recall a situation that happened here in Washington, D.C., where I'm based, where during the Black Lives Matter movement, you had Black Lives Matter chalked across a main thoroughfare here in Washington, D.C. Later, I think it was something like a year later, you had another black group chalk Black Unborn Lives Matter. This is a black pro-life group. And that group who chalked black unborn lives matter was prosecuted for graffiti, whereas the Black Lives Matter group was not. And so you can have a unequal application of the laws that itself can be discriminatory. And so if they're not punishing the vandalism in the same way they would for another sort of speaker, then that itself can be a form of discrimination prohibited by Title VI.
But that's not what the Trump administration is going after, clearly.
No, it's not.
So it's not about that, where they could. Yeah, right.
No, they definitely could. But what we have here is an administration going after faculty and students at these universities who, as President Trump had said, he thinks are bird brains or woke or leftist faculty that he doesn't like. And so we need to stick to the law. Because if we don't stick to the law, these same tools and these same abuses can be weaponized by people who we might not agree with to go after different sorts of speakers, IDF speakers on campus, for example. So the boot will eventually be on the other foot, and that's why we need to follow the Constitution and the law in any given case.
Imagine that. And then like last week, you had Congress trying to literally pass a bill in the House of Representatives to ban speech that's critical of Israel. I mean, the madness. Fortunately, that bill got pulled after there was outrage about it. But what members of Congress even thought that was a good idea? We live in the United States of America. You're not allowed to do this.
That bill, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, has come up quite a few times in Congress. Fortunately, we've been able to defeat it. But there, in no area of discrimination law do we actually define arguments and viewpoints that are unlawful. We define harassment as conduct severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive, but not arguments and viewpoints. This would be the first time, to my knowledge, in the history of the United States, where we actually define a viewpoint as being unlawful under law. And so that's why I think it's wrong under the First Amendment. And even if it did pass into law, it would be very quickly challenged and dispensed with by the courts.
Well, thank you for what you guys are doing, because I think we're in very dangerous territory here in the United States right now. And I think on Tucker's show just the other day, he was talking with what's his name about this sort of frontier that we're facing now, where they're going to try to shut it all down. You say something nasty on X, the thought police are coming for you in the United States. Like, this could be the thing that we're facing next. And I think so. Thank you for what you guys do, because it's just really disheartening to see all these conservatives who are just jumping all over this and supporting this. Really, it's really disheartening.
Well, look at us, though. We can defend people we don't like. Again, if you look at Harvard's rankings on the FIRE website, we have a freshman in high school. So I'm constantly looking at those college rankings, and I'm like, nope, you're not applying there. You're not applying there. I mean, they suck, right? But they have the right to suck. We have to sit here and advocate for their rights to be terrible, and for them to continue to do that if they so choose. So thank you so much,
vote with
Nick,
your feet. Go to a different college if you don't like what they have to say. But we need to stand up for First Amendment rights, even for people who we disagree with. As Jon Stewart, the comedian, once said, if you don't stand on principle when those principles are challenged, they're not principles, they're hobbies. And I don't think we should be free speech hobbyists. I think we should stand on principle and defend the rights of everyone, regardless of their view.
Love it.
Yeah, across the board. One standard across the board. And Dave Smith is who I was thinking of, who was just on Tucker. That was a great discussion. Nico, great to see you. Thank you so much for what you guys do. How can people support what you guys do at FIRE, by the way?
Yeah, our website is thefire.org. We have a membership program, become a FIRE member, but more broadly, stand up for the rights of people that you disagree with. There's a great tradition here in America of standing up for dissenters, for oddballs, for people who are at the margins of society, because we know that when those rights get eroded at the margins, it very quickly moves to the center, and we ourselves become vulnerable to government censorship and other abridgments of our freedom. So I would urge people to just stand up and speak out, not just when their side is targeted, but when even their ideological opponents or enemies maybe are targeted as well.
You can learn something from John Adams.
Thank you so much.
Boston
And
Massacre.
again, I was excited because we've never had someone from FIRE before, but I follow you religiously. I read all their books of your founders and things, that I got nervous and said your name wrong 3 times. I apologize.
I'm
Please
not
come
precious
back
about
anyway.
Those sorts of things.
Okay.
Nico,
I got excited.
My name is Nicholas. Nico comes from some soap opera, some character in a soap opera that my aunt watched when she was babysitting me. So now I'm named after a soap opera character, if that matters. But I'm not precious about it. Nico, it all works for me.
Thank you.
Well, as the world turns. Nico, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you real soon, hopefully. Great
Thanks
to
for
have
having
him
me.
on.